How's it going, everyone? It's your favorite apostates. I'm McKay.
I'm Jordan.
And we are back, and we're finally delivering on what was promised for so long, where I was going to round up a bunch of people who you probably don't know.
Unlikely Mormon influencers, if you will.
Incognito mode for a lot of them, if you ask me. I mean, I've expanded the term influencer to be just people in media on the internet or whatever. So we're going to take a look at that. But before we get to that, let's talk about our awesome sponsor for this episode, Aura.
So I want you guys to think about how often in a day you get spam text messages or phone calls, because at this point I don't even answer my phone anymore because I'm just assuming that it's spam.
Or if you're like me and you're expecting an important call, you'll just answer any call that comes to your phone just in case, only to find out that it's just spam numbers calling your phone. Well, thanks to Aura, they have an awesome data broker opt-out tool that will help remove your personal information from data brokers and people search sites that sell your information to identity thieves, scammers, and more, and help you stop those pesky spam calls.
Additionally, Aura also offers identity theft protection, monitors your personal data, including super important things like your social security number, and it's cross-referencing that with all the other things all the places it could possibly go, the dark web, areas and things you don't want that information on. And it's going to give you an alert if there is ever a problem so that you don't have to do anything. They're already doing that work for you. And every adult on your account, up to 5 people, gets $1 million in identity theft insurance to help cover you if you run into this issue specifically.
So that is up to $5 million total in coverage for the 5 people, which is awesome. We don't want to leave our family vulnerable to data breaches and these data brokers. And if you don't want to either, you can go to aura.com/Jordan and McKay to try 2 weeks absolutely free. That will be plenty of time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data has been exposed.
You will also find the link that we just said in our description as well. So thank you again to Aura for sponsoring this video. So here's the rub, okay? We give you this speech every video, but it seems necessary at this point, and especially when we emphasize people who we don't normally talk about, that this is solely for information and interesting, thought-provoking sake, okay? This is not to be hateful. This is not to be like, shame on you. That's your own call to pass judgment in that way.
Yeah.
We're just pointing out the information that I think is interesting. And if any of these people aren't definitively Mormon, we will happily make a correction in the description in the comments if that information is inaccurate.
I feel like most of the people that I have on here are pretty much confirmed, at least within the most recent few years. So I shouldn't be saying anything that I shouldn't. And then, if you're not, and I didn't find any information that tells me that you're not, then, it is what it is.
The idea is we talk a lot around these parts, around informed consent and just, being an informed consumer. And everybody spends their data dollars, let's say, however they wish. Whatever content you want to watch is fine. There's just lots of people, just like anybody else, who want to be informed about where their money is going. So if you don't like the idea that some of these people are possibly tithing to the Mormon church, paying money directly to the Mormon church based on the content that you're watching, then that's your choice. If these are exceptions to your Mormon rule, wonderful. We all have those. If these are, you don't give a shit and you just don't give a shit, then why are you here? I can't help you with that.
You can stop here. I'm setting you free. If you don't give a shit,
I don't care.
You're set free. You don't have to watch.
Leave a crying comment in the comments. I don't care. But beyond that, that's just what it is. It's just informed consent. You want to know where your money is going, and you want to be intentional about what you're doing with your data. At least a lot of the people that we watch do, which is why this series is as popular as it is. So that's just our purpose, is just bringing that to your attention, pointing out that it's interesting because there's patterns and habits and fascinating things that exist within Mormon culture, and why are they all so famous, and how did they get here, and why are some of them so inherently successful? I think it's just kind of an interesting phenomenon.
It always goes back to those questions that we were being asked constantly on TikTok which was, why are there so many Mormon influencers? And by extension, why are there so many Mormons in media?
Mm-hmm.
And we just think it's an interesting thing. And additionally, these are the things that I would like to know. If there is someone who I know without a doubt is going to be tithing on the money that they make off of me, I'm going to think twice about supporting a creator, because I like to support people who share the same kinds of values that I do. So,
but we are not the moral authority on this
No.
issue. You get to make your own personal
your own
choices
call.
and judgments. And we, just like anybody else who reports on information, we're just providing you the info and the background that we have as ex-Mormons to kind of point you towards that information. What you do with that is all on you. That can't possibly fall to me.
Anyway, to get on with a few of the people that I have curated, let's just jump right into it. That's not a Philip DeFranco reference. I wanted to start out with a banger because I remember not really realizing at first until I looked him up, and then I was like, okay. But I feel like Mark Rober is a person that most people who are on the internet have probably seen, even if they don't know his name. This guy has nearly 60 million subscribers on YouTube, which is a colossal number. That's
huge.
That's not just regular big channel. That is like absolutely massive creator. And you probably know him. They get reposted every year. He's done reiterations of the same idea, but you probably know him from his Messing with Porch Pirates videos. But essentially the idea was, during the holiday season, a lot of people get packages when they're ordering gifts for their loved ones. And a lot of people take advantage of that and they steal those packages. So in this series, every year he would do an iteration of like a decoy package. And then whenever that would get taken off of a doorstep, he would basically lay traps of like glitter bombs or fart sprays and put hidden cameras in the boxes and everything. It was mostly like an engineering centered video with sciencey centered video with kind of like a current social topic twist to it. And just, it's funny. It's really interesting. I love that kind of shit, like engineering and stuff on YouTube. So I would always watch them, and I thought that was really cool. And then come to find out, the thing that tipped me off was learning that he went to BYU for his undergrad. I was like, oh, okay, because
you don't go to BYU unless you're Mormon, folks.
And you don't,
tiny 1%.
And if you're not Mormon and you go to BYU, you probably play football, and that's pretty much the exception. So he gets a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from BYU, and then he goes on to get his master's in USC and worked at NASA JPL for 9 years, which is Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So Mans is a literal rocket scientist.
Okay.
He's also the founder and CEO of Crunch Labs, which is like a subscription box service for like STEM things for kids, which I think is pretty cool, honestly. But then coming into the religion aspect and how it incorporates into his brand, it really doesn't. There's essentially nothing that connects his brand to Mormonism. He doesn't talk about Mormonism. And that's really kind of where it lands with that kind of stuff. He's super private about his personal life, including religion and everything. He did release a video about 3 years ago where he was talking about his experience with his son who's autistic that he had almost never shown on his channel up to that point. If you know us, you know that we don't with family vloggers around here. And protecting kids' privacy online, I think really does not get talked about enough, especially with, how really young the internet is. Like, most people who were there during the infancy of the internet are still alive and kicking, and this whole social media experiment really has just begun. So when he's protecting the identity of his child, I think that's really admirable. And then when he finally did share this video, he used it as a fundraising opportunity for an organization called Next for Autism. I did look up that organization, and I don't know. It was kind of mixed reviews on whether it's helpful. I mean, it's not Autism Speaks.
I was going to
right?
say, if you're not familiar with Autism Speaks, I think that's where everybody's hesitancy around this issue stems from, is because they're not the greatest organization.
I think there was, I can't remember what the, some controversy surrounding it, but if you guys are aware of this organization, let us know. But he did raise, just with that video alone, $3.3 million for that organization, which is substantial.
Incredible, yeah.
So shout out to that. Obviously, we like to see representation of people with autism in the media and everything like that. Also, right before we sat down to make this, I researched him just to cover all my bases. But he alluded to the fact on Twitter a couple months ago that he's been divorced for several years, like 3.5 years, which is like a long time for a Mormon man to not be married.
For sure.
As an adult.
Especially if you're not fornicating.
I know. That's usually like the main thing. But anyway, I hope he's got a lot of shit to deal with. I wouldn't want to date anybody who links up with Mr. Beast that often, but that's just me. Also, another sleeper YouTube guy, Roman Atwood. I feel like almost nobody knows that he's Mormon.
I didn't know.
It's kind of weird. And when I started looking him up, I was able to find clips and stuff where he's talking about it. But anyway, if you don't know who Roman Atwood is, he is known for prank videos back in like the 2010s. Like,
what a time.
Those cringe, annoying ass prank videos, which is already not setting up a great precedent for the guy. Not a good first impression.
I long for the 2010s.
His most viewed video on his channel was a prank that he did featuring Logan Paul back in the early days of Logan Paul's YouTube career. God, I long for that time because a monster has been created from that.
Oh,
anyway,
God.
He's actually a convert to the church, which I feel like is kind of a rarity to have an adult person in the media who is also a Mormon. But I mean, he has tattoos and everything, so there is a lot about him that doesn't seem very
the Mormon vibe.
He doesn't have like the Mormon glaze because of that. So I feel like people
probably
don't realize because he doesn't have that Mormon glaze. Although he does have, he will post pictures of himself and the family going to church and stuff. So
okay,
it's not like he doesn't participate. He definitely does.
That pretty much seals the deal there.
He gave a little bit of his conversion story on the Impulsive podcast, which is Logan Paul's podcast. Gross. But let's roll that real fast.
Best friend, soulmate. I 20 minutes without her, I'm texting her, I miss you. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's scary.
And you're not Mormon?
I am Mormon. Yeah, I actually am.
No, you're not.
Yeah, we are. But I wasn't Mormon when we met.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's something I've never told because 13 years on YouTube.
Yep.
No religion, no politics.
Same.
So I'm gonna break out of the box for you. Here we go.
Wow.
I've always been religious. Never part of any actual church. I've been to almost all churches, from Catholic to Apostolic to, you name it. When I was a young, 14, 15, my mother and father joined the LDS, Mormon Church. It's not even Mormon anymore.
Yeah.
Mormon has such a bad rep that I think everybody likes to avoid it. But mom and dad joined when I was young, and I seen them change tremendously. From drinking, smoking, partying to like, boom, off switch, family, raising kids the best they could, just being a good example.
Yeah.
About 3+ years ago, my mother passed away. We were all on vacation. She's on a scooter. She literally falls off a scooter, passes away on the spot.
I couldn't believe that.
Devastated.
Horrible.
That incident pulled Brittany and I both, without ever talking to each other about it, to church. This thing that my mother was a part of. Like I something in my head was like, this is what she wants for me. And when we just kept naturally going, it was so heavy on me, man. Like it gave me so much hope and joy. My mom's passing was easier. My life became easier. I had more joy than I ever found skydiving in Dubai or a successful YouTube channel or all the money that I could ever want in a bank account. I had more joy following Jesus than I had with all of the world combined.
Wow.
And I couldn't deny it anymore. I couldn't deny it to the point where we started having missionaries over. And it felt so good to us that we joined, and we both were baptized together same day. And we've been just trying to live as good humans, man. That's it. Like we're not too deep into the church, but we enjoy going, and we just, I don't know, man.
I just wanted to bring up this clip in particular where he's talking about it because the conversion story, I'm not trying to dog on him whatsoever, but to him it sounds really miraculous. Like his mom passed away,
which is tragic.
He was in a very emotionally raw part of his life, and then all of a sudden he's going to church, and he notices that the church has a lot to offer for him and a lot of answers maybe to the questions that he has.
This is common in grief, right?
Yeah.
Like grief is like the all-consuming, when it happens to you, it's like this all-consuming unknown. And if you have a religion, whether it's Mormonism or something else, it doesn't feel as scary because you have answers. Like, yes, I am able to cope with the pain better because I know I'm going to see my mom again. Like it makes sense. To the point that missionaries rely on those kinds of experiences for conversions because they know people are feeling vulnerable enough that they will cling to something that feels solid. And so I don't really blame people who convert in that state because it makes a lot of sense.
That was the part that I most wanted to hit on, was when you're a missionary like I was, specifically one of the methods that they use to find people who are primed to receive the gospel is looking for people who have recently had a death in the family, who have recently moved, who have had a kid, or, kind of stressful events like that where maybe they're looking for some stability on some of those bigger questions in life. And I think that's really something kind of sinister that the church does. But I mean, that's the only way that anybody's really going to have a successful experience, so to speak, with the church that leads to baptism, is if you can get them at an emotional part in their life. Otherwise,
I mean, that's not true 100% of the time.
Not 100% of the time.
A lot of them.
But yeah, for a lot of people, that's how the story goes. So I don't know. I don't want to dog on him any more than
No, I get it.
And definitely not more than what I'm going to bring up in just a second here. But I just thought it was interesting. And like I said, I wanted to bring up this little bit from the podcast that he does with his wife, where he felt the need to dogpile on Dylan Mulvaney over that stupid singular promotional can of Bud Light that she received.
They used a man trying to be a female to promote beer, right?
An American, all-American.
If you're gonna use a female, why not use a female that was born a female, that's capable of birthing children and raising them? How about dealing with a period every single month? Why not just give a woman that position?
Right.
I don't need a white man talking to me about oppression. I don't. I do not need one more fucking word out of your yap. I don't. Please stop. You do not have the positionality or the intelligence to be talking about this issue. Sit down. If periods are the only thing that you can come up with in terms of why it's hard to be a woman, sit down.
Bud Light would thrive if they did that. So what's the agenda? Why? I'm confused by that. Why is Woman of the Year
been a woman
biological woman
forever?
Like, if
I was
a woman,
not a woman,
if
but
I was a woman, I would be pissed. I would be so pissed. Like, I've seen people comparing, like, some of the men, women, transgender men, women, I'm getting it all backwards, to, like, doing blackface.
Right.
Is they're, like, literally making fun of women. And they're getting their parts, and they're getting their roles, and they're beating them in sports. And, bro, that's a topic that just I can't figure out. I can't figure it out.
Yeah,
I don't. Maybe you shouldn't listen to those people. Maybe we just shouldn't
Seriously.
do that. Maybe we shouldn't repeat that because that's just fucked. And why are we making that comparison?
Yeah.
Why do we can we deal with one issue at a time. These white men, one issue. Like, can we just talk
Right.
about transphobia for a minute before we have to bring racism into this too? Like, how do you hit on all the fucking issues you shouldn't be fucking talking about as a white man in like 30 seconds? It's bewildering to me.
It's just funny. Like, this clip so perfectly embodies the idea that people who hold these opinions have never met a trans person and
No.
have absolutely no desire to do so, because then they might be tempted to empathize with them.
The
God
empathy
forbid.
is lacking here.
But I think this kind of an attitude is really emblematic of the things that I saw when I was in church. I mean, these are the things.
This
the
is Mormon
exact
rhetoric
way,
right here.
This is the exact way that I hear family members of mine who are Mormon talk about trans issues.
Uh-huh.
And it stems from just complete and total ignorance. And in my family's case, my cousin is trans. And in my family's case, there is not an unwillful ignorance issue. It is a completely willful ignorance issue, in my opinion, that they just don't really care to empathize as much. And they say things like this, and
This,
it's really disappointing.
in today's day and age, under the current administration in which we unfortunately now exist, if you live in America,
Jordan, we're supposed to be distracting the people from that.
unfortunately, this is violence. This leads to violence against trans people. This is why, people of color who are also trans, who are targeted at a disproportional rate. Like, it's just wild to me that they can talk so flippantly about these things and like try to connect the dots on issues and be like, oh, it's like blackface. And I'm like, why
Right.
is that our comparison here? Like, why is that the only comparison for which you can understand this? Or like, are you saying that you understand blackface is bad? So that's where the because I'm not so certain of that either at this point.
Yeah.
But like, this is Mormon rhetoric tied up into a little bow, because they say things like this and they're like, they'll say people like me are exaggerating and I'm being ridiculous and I'm taking it too far, and I'm reading into context that's not there, or like anything that they tell me. But like, jokes like these aren't funny, and they turn people to have those beliefs and nurture them until they exude from them and cause harm and violence towards other people. Like, we can't dismiss how the making jokes like these or trying to be funny about it bridges the gap between that and like direct harm. Because if we don't make that gap, like, we have serious issues. We don't just jump to violence. These things enable that to happen.
They precede
Yes.
violence.
And it allows Mormon people to feel comfortable in this belief, because it's like, oh yeah, haha, it's funny, like, trans people, haha. Like, it's fucking not. Like, you think it's fine because it's just a joke. And that is a huge red flag if you have somebody like that in your life.
And it's not a joke. It's somebody's life. It's somebody's lived experience. And, you know, unfortunately, because of my lived experience, if you're not obviously like on using your social media platform and making any sort of a statement, that's not what I believe. You know, we love trans people. We love the queer community or whatever. This is what my mind defaults to, what you think about the situation. Because people who do love queer folks will say so, and they won't be afraid to do so.
And they can't stand within reason with the idea that this isn't Christ-like or compassionate in any sense. Like, tell me, like, even Mormon God, like, I don't understand how anybody sits with Mormon God and is able to crack shit like this and thinks that you wouldn't be uncomfortable with what I know about Mormon God, that he wouldn't be uncomfortable with that kind of rhetoric, whether you feel like what they're doing is sinful or not. Like, that just never made sense to me. But these people feel vindicated in that, because it's like, well, I can be absolutely abhorrent about it because that's what the Book of Mormon says, and that's what the church says, and that's what the old white saggy ballsack leaders say. And
it's sin, and why should I treat that with respect?
I can't treat that respectfully.
So anyway, Roman Atwood, I don't like the guy. His
Not a fan.
content's doo-doo anyway, so it's just him like flying his helicopter and doing.
And I'm
rich guy
sure he
shit.
has
It's
millions
boring
of
to me.
subscribers and is insanely successful and thinks that we're peasant little peons, and that's fine. But
And we are. Who cares?
I have a conscience and I can sleep at night, and I'm not transphobic or homophobic, so
Yeah,
I'll
Easy.
take less subscribers for that.
Easy. Next is a fun one, and one that Jordan finally knows. It's the solar death ray guy, which he did fly under my. Oh, he's at Joe My Heck on TikTok and on Instagram. Flew under my radar for a little while because he is not obviously Mormon.
We discovered this together in real time.
In real time.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that tipped us off?
I found a relative's Instagram.
Yeah. Okay. Well, why did we look for that?
It was
in
the
first
garment.
place? Oh, it was the garment.
And I was
We
like,
garment checked him.
We garment checked him, and I was like, and then
like,
I
"Hold
looked
up."
at somebody's Instagram, and I was like, oh, there it is.
So he makes these fucking hilarious a lot of the times, like similar to Mark Rober, kind of sciencey videos, but usually he's just burning shit with this giant lenticular
Why not?
panel that he uses as the solar death ray, and he just burns shit.
This viewer asked me to put a wiener under the solar death ray. I get a lot of requests to put stuff under the solar death ray, but incinerating a wiener under the solar death ray rules.
Or he pours molten aluminum into like a big old bucket full of
It is
Orbeez
fascinating.
and stuff like that.
I'll give him that.
Super satisfying. We love to see it. And but yeah, he is also a doctor. He's Dr. Joe Richards. He's a retired Air Force colonel,
Wow.
board certified psychologist and former
Psychiatrist.
board certified psychiatrist and former forensic psychiatrist.
Military and med school, huh?
Yeah, and 3 million plus on YouTube and over 1 million followers on TikTok. So he has a pretty sizable following as well.
He looks like every Mormon guy in my ward growing up. He does have the Mormon
Right.
white dude look for sure.
Yeah, he's just out there in Arizona. It
He's
sounds like he lived a life,
unproblematic to me.
in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, like
He seems really chill, and
he's not out here talking about
Yeah.
Bud Light and having a
obviously
freaking fit about
I'm
it.
nervous because I don't think I've ever seen him say anything specific.
Who knows? Maybe people who know him are like, oh no, he's terrible. But I hope not, because I have a vision of him in
I
my
know.
mind as this nice, wholesome gentleman. So
He reminds me of my high school chemistry teacher who was like very eclectic, I will say.
shout out Kirk.
Shout out Kirk, who was also married to a Mormon.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Weird.
That is
He
weird.
wasn't Mormon himself, but
But yeah, it was the Salt Lake Temple photos that we found of him with family members
Yeah.
in front of the temple that sealed the deal. I feel like he's hopefully fairly unproblematic. Like I said, everybody has their exceptions to the rule in terms of watching content. If it doesn't bother you that much, again, that's fine. I just hope he's
Right.
not homophobic and transphobic, but with Mormonism, you'd be going against the grain if that's the case. Okay, so next we have Jane Williamson. She's at Jane on TikTok, I believe. Okay, so Jane has a lot of followers. She's in the millions on Instagram and the millions on TikTok. Looks like she's in the millions on YouTube as well. Her whole shtick from the beginning has been making fun of the Utah influencer.
Should we invite the Joneses to Chickenley's party? They don't even have kids. Babe, I'm inviting everyone. Hi, how much are your balloon arches? They're $500. Okay, I have my credit card whenever you're ready.
Like, that's been the whole thing from the very beginning. I would be shocked if any of you in, like, semi-Mormon or Mormon-adjacent circles haven't come across Jane's content. Like, I remember, I feel like she started during the pandemic, because I feel like I remember seeing stuff from her
She's been
during
doing
the
it for a
pandemic.
long time.
But maybe 2020 is all a blur, am I right?
It's 5
So-
years ago.
She's been doing this for a long time. She lives in Utah, and she plays the part. Like, she plays the part of the Utah influencer and the stupid shit that they say and do, and does it, like, well. Like, she calls her daughter Chicken Lee. Like, it's a very on the nose parody of the Utah Mormon influencer. But I feel like I see the tide turning on Jane a little bit, because I don't know how long you can do parody in that sense without, like, essentially becoming the parody. Because, like, you make fun of the influencers for being like this, and she says, oh, it's just, like, making fun of myself. But I'm like, they get good money. She makes a ton of money, I would presume. They live in a huge house. She does lots of sponsored stuff. How long before you can't do the parody anymore? Because that's
Right.
what you've become. Like, you are the Utah Mormon influencer. Everybody can crack jokes about it, but, like, if you are that influencer, if you are that popular and you are making that money, do you really have the room to be making fun of it anymore? I don't know.
Right.
That's, that's a larger discussion. You can come to your own conclusions on that, but that's my thought.
She does regularly post kind of like Mormon coded, dressed up for church, kind of outside of the building. And they did post photos when they went to her brother's wedding. But it didn't look like they were dressed to enter. So I don't know if she's necessarily that Mormon. It's been a while since she kind of posted those, the church photos. I think it was Mother's Day last year.
Out.
But usually when people aren't dressed to go inside the temple for a sibling's wedding, that means maybe they don't have a recommend to go inside. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It's just an observation. I think it's wrong. Everybody should be able to go and attend their own fucking sibling's wedding. But
It's not that deep.
Mormonism says you have to be worthy to go into the temple, and worthiness is deemed by what we say is okay. The other thing that Jordan brought to my attention was this woman posted on social media and was asking for people in the Salt Lake area that like nannied to see if they would come and work for her.
This
Which-
is my personal preference, but no.
I feel like that is just really
Not somebody who
not
follows
a good
you.
idea.
If you have enough money to pay for a nanny, go through a fucking agency. Go through an agency
Well, and
have them sign an NDA.
I'm just thinking of safety.
Yeah,
Like
no, that's an
literally
issue.
anybody could just pretend to be someone, and then they know
Get in your
who
house.
you are. Like get in your house and all that shit.
Yeah, like what if you have a crazy that's like taking videos of you without you knowing,
Yeah.
and like, this is Ruby Frankie's internet now. Okay, we're paranoid as fuck in these parts.
Yeah. So I thought that was really weird. That's really Mormon Utah influencer of her to do. Too.
There is,
It's just,
but that's Mormon inherently too, right? Because there is this
Right.
illusion of safety in Mormonism where like your Mormon community is safe, the people in
Yeah.
your ward are safe, you can rely on them. And that's not always the case. It's not
Yeah.
always the case. It's a false sense of security.
That's fair. I hadn't considered that at all. Yeah, I feel like, I'm 12 years old and people in the ward were having me watch their kids. I'd never fucking taken care of a baby in my entire life.
It's just how it was.
So that's a really good point to bring up. One I didn't dive into very much, but a lot of people had mentioned was House of Hughes, which does like kind of low-key family vlog content. I'm not a fan, to be honest. But to answer people's questions, it seems like they were Mormon, but I think more recently they don't have pictures of them getting married in the temple or anything like that. They don't have pictures of them like going to church or anything, and tattoos, and they don't dress like they're Mormon anymore. So I feel like they're probably not.
On their way out.
This was the only picture I could find from their wedding. It looks like it's in somebody's backyard, which, no shade. I'm not trying
It's
to
a very
say
Mormon
that's
looking
bad.
dress.
But
Could also just
usually,
be a modest dress.
Yeah, usually it is suggesting that they didn't get married in the temple, and whatever.
That's
It was a
controversial.
long time ago, so that doesn't really mean anything to me. But more recently,
She has the Mormon glaze. I don't follow these people, so I can't tell you
Yeah.
much about that.
so anyway, on to the next one. This one is an interesting one to me, and I feel like you would know pretty easily if Read Moon of Moon's Rare Books.
TikTok.
Yeah. If it wasn't already obvious, Moon's Rare Book is a bookstore in Provo, Utah, which is where BYU is. But he's got a huge following. Over 2 million followers on TikTok, over 1 million followers on Instagram. The bookstore's in Provo, which
The bookstore is impressive.
the
like, it
Mormon
is
Mecca. Yeah, and
quite
it is
wild.
awesome. They specialize, and it's basically like a bookstore and a museum because they sell and display old and rare books of all kinds. And I think I remember the first thing that I saw of him on social media was old or like first edition Lord of the Rings ones. Or there was like I think he had a first edition print Bible as well. Like really old books that we're talking about here. He also touts himself as being the #1 dealer of first edition copies of the Book of Mormon.
Those ain't cheap. either.
They are not cheap. Yeah, here's a clip of him talking about it a little bit.
The Book of Mormon also went small after the first edition because missionaries were taking it out. But this is a Nauvoo edition of the Book of Mormon, but it's also Joseph Smith's copy. So really, in the realm of collecting early church history, you cannot beat Joseph Smith, Hiram Smith, and Samuel Smith's copies of the Book of Mormon.
What feeling do you get as you hold them and look through this? For me, it's like a connection with the past. It makes these people a little bit more.
Well, absolutely. And the more history you know, we know that in Nauvoo, Joseph gave his most famous sermon, the King Follett Discourse. I can't help but think that that's in his pocket when he's giving this. I don't know that, but it's his copy of the Book of Mormon when he's in Nauvoo.
Yeah. Well, there's all those famous pictures of him holding, and you think, oh, maybe he's doing his preaching and he's holding that book. That's an amazing treasure.
So, and I would say the highlight of my early church history collection is that I've been able to acquire a few by loan, but mostly by acquisition, scripture belonging to every president of the church except President Nelson.
I can't help. I don't know anything about this. I'm not an expert in like rare books or collector's items by any means, but I'm kind of surprised that he's handling it like just with his hands.
I feel like that's probably the first thing that everybody thinks whenever they encounter his. That's like,
I feel like that
in
shit's
every
so
comment
delicate,
section.
you know?
Yeah, and he gives the reason. I think maybe in this video too, because the guy who was interviewing him also questioned. But it's because the oils, you're supposed to wash your hands first.
Oh,
but
okay.
whatever oils left on your hand are not as damaging as what could happen if you're wearing gloves
and
you
falls.
drop the book.
Oh, interesting. So it's kind of like
yeah.
You're doing like harm reduction.
Harm reduction, exactly.
With the book. Okay.
I don't think there's anything that you could ever do to perfectly preserve a book that gets open and closed.
That's fair. That's fair.
Anyway.
This is a man who clearly reveres Joseph Smith.
Yeah. So that was kind of crazy because on this channel, we don't with Joseph Smith in the slightest.
And he graduated from BYU all the way back in 1985. Like,
yeah.
Dang.
But, you know, I
say all the way, but I feel like he looks older than he is. I don't know why I thought he was older than that.
I don't know. 1985 was 40 years ago.
Okay.
And he died. So
I've just offended everyone in the comments. I didn't
Sorry.
want to, guys. Sorry.
Honestly, look up the bookstore. If you were in Provo, the next time we're in Provo, I would like to go to this place. I'm just saying.
I don't want to be in Provo,
cool.
but
I really don't want to be in Provo, but it would be worth going to something cool like that because they have all kinds of books at that bookstore. We also have the North Valley Group, which is like a weird name. I was always wondering what the name was about. Anyway, they have 1.7 million followers on Instagram, 2.1 million followers on TikTok.
We're going to show you these videos and you will know exactly who
you
I'm
will
talking
know
about if you are chronically online, especially.
There's no way that you're on either of those apps and you haven't encountered a video from these guys because usually they're masterpieces. The group is comprised of the dad, who's Kurt Keebles, I want to say, his sons Spencer and Ryan, and his son-in-law Cody Squires, who I'm actually kind of suspicious of being related to me because I have Squires in my family. But similar to Roman Atwood, it seems like Kurt is actually a convert because I'd seen a social media post referencing from about 2 years ago, referencing him having his 40th anniversary of being baptized.
Oh, okay.
Which would have placed him getting baptized around the time that he was in college. Kind of interesting that he's a really long time Mormon, but not born into it. He was a convert.
I had
and it
suspicion.
seems like he was an easy garment check.
I'm
going to be honest.
I had suspicions about these guys for a long time. The garments were there. And I was kind of suspicious. If you pay attention to when they're in, I think, the dad's house, there's a lot of stuff on the walls that pointed me. But the thing that finally sealed the deal is the videos that they do, which are in the church auditorium.
Yep. And it's like so obvious. Like I don't even need to see
gym,
the whole thing. The vibe,
wall,
the carpet on the wall, the hardwood floor. You just know.
The basketball
This is a
hoop.
steak center. Like,
yep.
So they're doing like these dances in the cultural hall at a stake center, and it's just like super duper obvious. But it's weird why they're called North Valley Group, because it actually started as social media for the real estate agent group that Kurt created. And so they started doing like sharing videos just of like listings that he had and everything. Like if you scroll back on their their Facebook page, it's just videos of them showing houses or whatever. And then I think somewhere along the way they wanted to just like get on trends on social media, so they would combine their real estate stuff with a little bit of humor. And now it's just like all goofy, relatable, like family oriented, like goofy stuff. So I highly recommend. I think it's really funny.
I think it's funny.
They do
the like choreographed things in the church.
They do like little dancing and everything.
It's like quite impressive.
Yeah, it's a masterpiece every time. And then a really odd thing. I just was Googling his name and whatever, and I guess he worked at Safeway for like 30 years.
It's a long time.
And ended up getting terminated at Safeway because he stopped a high school age shoplifter. And Safeway had a no stopping policy because that opens them up to liability.
That's most places.
Anyway, that's a lot of places. It's more complicated than just...
The sense of justice is strong.
Anyway, but that violates company policy. And then, so the reason I found this out was there was an article when he got terminated because the whole community was like, what the fuck? Why? This guy worked there for 30 years and he got terminated.
Yeah.
But kind of interesting how it came out, because then he got licensed to do real estate. He's doing this with his sons, and now they have this giant social media platform. Seems like it was the right call. Yeah.
As Mormons would say, it was a blessing in disguise.
And according to Zillow, he is selling houses. They don't. The sons don't. Between the three of them, it was like 2 over the past year. But
so you can safely presume that this guy, at least the dad, is probably tithing on that money.
Yeah.
So do with that what you will.
Do with that what you will. We're just here presenting information.
I mean, I think these 4 of them kind of demonstrate the just inherent likability of Mormons. I feel like where they're just like, he reminds me of your dad a lot. Like, just seems very warm, funny, likable.
Yeah.
Like, give you the shirt off your back type of guy. Everybody has nice things to say. Like, Mormons just kind of give that vibe, and I think that actually does translate in the social media world.
Yeah, I totally think they remind me a lot of the McFarlanes. There's just something really attractive social media wise about that. Just like a dude and his boys just doing little skits and little dances and shit like that.
Dad humor. Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. Okay, so now we come to my favorite on this list, probably the most controversial. Somebody's going to bitch at me in the comments, and it's fine. But like I said...
In my opinion, the least controversial.
We all have the people that we are willing to make exceptions for. You know? We all have those influencers that, like, you know, plenty of you last video were like, or like 2 videos ago, were like, oh yeah, I know it's bad, but I watched Ballerina Farm. I just can't not. And so we all have those people, right? And some of them are better than others, but it's not my job to tell you who's bad or worse or shit or great, right? I can't possibly take that on. I have too much going on in my life. So we're going to talk about the next person on this list, which, if it isn't obvious by the stack of books that I'm holding, and my Kindle is on the top, which is where the rest exists, we're talking about Brandon Sanderson. If you are not familiar with Brandon Sanderson, he is probably one of the most famous and incredibly talented fantasy authors of our time. I feel like most people within the fantasy genre won't dispute that. He has quite a lot of books. The dude churns them out like... I don't even fucking know what to compare it to. He's like a fucking book brain factory. I don't even know. But I haven't read all of his stuff. I'm slowly making my way through the Stormlight archive because the dude is long-winded. Jesus Christ. But the reason that I feel more comfortable giving my money to, or at least some of my money, presumably, if he's paying tithing to the church, the reason that I'm more comfortable with that is I feel like Brandon has based on the things he's said, a more nuanced view of issues that are important to me as an ex-Mormon, which are specifically like queer issues. And I think this is important because Brandon, in my opinion, is fairly cut and dry Mormon. Like, went to BYU, served a mission in Korea. He did everything right. Got married in the temple, has multiple kids. Cut and dry Mormon man.
Yeah.
So I think it means a lot when somebody who is cut and dry Mormon is more willing to kind of stand up for things that the Mormon church is inherently not going to be thrilled with. Now, I also think that doubly stands because as far as I know, he's currently still teaching at BYU. And we'll talk more about potentially why that might be an issue in a minute. But I think of all the people to have issue with the things, he has been vocal and outspoken about a lot of LGBTQ plus issues. And like, as a bisexual person, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that he has been willing to talk about where he felt he has erred. He has talked about explicitly when he supported Prop 8, which was California's law to, gay marriage, this whole thing we've talked about on this channel a million times. He talked about how his views have changed since then. And then he also donates money, like he financially allocates resources to LGBTQ plus queer organizations, which I think is really putting your money where your mouth is. Like, he's not just saying it, he's doing it. And that's not even to mention like the queer representation and characters that exist within his books, which I think is also going the extra mile because there are plenty of authors who do that and do not do it well. So I think Brandon has a lot in his corner that, to me, I'm okay with it. I don't need you to be okay with it. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was important that we talk about some of the things that he said because some people might not be aware.
Very specifically on his website, in his like knowledge base section about himself, and under the religion topic, there is a entry that's titled, "I've heard you're a practicing member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What are your opinions on gay rights, particularly in light of the church's controversial relationship to LGBTQ plus community?"
He has this whole thing on his website, and he has also done Reddit AMAs where he has talked about some of these things additionally in depth. But I wanted to read you his words specifically. He says, "My current stance is one of unequivocal support for LGBTQ plus rights. I support gay marriage, I support trans rights, the rights of non-binary people, and I support the rights of trans people to affirm their own identity with love and support. I support anti-discrimination legislation and have voted consistently along those lines the last 15 years, which I think says a lot. I am marking the posting of this FAQ item at the encouragement of several of my LGBTQ plus fans with a sizable donation to the Utah Pride Center and another to the Out Foundation." That to me is balls to the wall in terms of Mormonism and support for these issues. Like, not only are we talking about our personal beliefs, but we're also voting that way, which I think is significant because sometimes those two don't align in Mormonism, and that makes a big difference, right? And putting money towards specific to Utah, which is I think where he currently lives, like locations specific where like those Utah nonprofits that serve the queer community, like as a therapist, they need all your support. They need all your money because they're dealing with an avalanche of shit that is coming at them at a very fast pace right now. And so I love that he is taking this so seriously, that he's doing this like on a local level. I think matters a lot. And he's not quiet about it. The interesting thing is, like, I personally don't really care how he reconciles this with Mormonism. To me, it's not reconcilable. For him, that's fine. But the fact that he's willing to put this on his website, I think says a lot, because there could certainly be church discipline that could come from this. Like, certainly. Because this is not in the church's mindset, and I've seen it happen a million times. Like, my own boss is a target of, like, posting opinions personally and professionally and then getting targeted by the church because it doesn't align when you support trans people and gay people. This is not an uncommon issue. So it is interesting to me why they don't pick on him. He's also a white man. There's some privilege there, right? And I'm sure he would be the first to say that. But I think it's interesting that despite the fact that he's so outspoken and vocal about these things, he still works at BYU. Does the church look the other way because they like having their famous people that work for the church?
Well, in particular, because I think he only, from what I was reading, he only teaches one section in creative writing that's specifically about sci-fi and fantasy, which is his niche. But given the current circumstances, the university recently got a new president, and he is committed to making sure that employees of the university are publicly and privately living and promoting the ideals that the church teaches. So for him to have this on his website that publicly goes against what the church has said regarding queer folks and gay marriage and all of that stuff, I think the gay marriage thing is a little more nuanced since they put their weight behind that one bill a year or two ago. But like supporting queer folks is not. And for him to put this on his website and advertise it, I'm really interested to see how that's going to affect his employ with BYU, because I don't think that the president would take kindly to that. But he's a public figure, so maybe they'll look the other way. I don't know. Only time will tell.
I mean, he said he wants the church to recognize gay marriage, which I don't think will ever happen, honestly. At least maybe not in my lifetime. And supporting ordaining trans men to the priesthood, which would be otherworldly. Like, I tell you,
trans
I feel
folks
like
can't even go to the temple or anything.
I would simply pass away. I do not
I don't think it's going to
see
happen.
that ever happening. But the fact that you have somebody who is so vocal about this and is so also affirmatively like a participating member, like I just think about anybody else in this position who would say something like that. I feel like would just be like, X. What the fuck? You're done. You can't talk about that shit because we don't support that, and that's not affirming the leaders because the leaders don't believe that and they're not going to do that. And so, you know, he makes a case for being a person who tries to change the church from the inside, which I once felt similarly. I don't necessarily hate people in that position, but it is hard from the outside too to see this and be like, I don't know. There's lots of arguments there, right? Like you have to have people who are there in the church to support the people who are queer and struggling in that environment. And like you want people like Brandon in there so that people like children and teens growing up in the church feel like they have a safe place. But then also at the same time, there are people who have arguments against that. And I can also see that as a former progressive Mormon. So this is very nuanced and complicated. But of all the people, I think he talks the talk and walks the walk in terms of like showing up for queer folks. And that's a lot more than most people can say.
The last one I wanted to bring up, I wanted to do it with Brandon Sanderson because there are other things that are kind of similar and what I would like to talk about. But another one that I see in the comment section a lot about people asking about is cinema therapy.
Somebody commented and said we should like collab with them or something. And that was the first time I had ever heard who they were. I didn't know they were Mormon.
Yeah. And I'm not like a film buff or anything like that, so I really hadn't heard of cinema therapy or anything, and it's not really my jam. There's nothing wrong with that anyway. But their channel on YouTube, 1.7 million subscribers, which is a sizable amount. We love that. We love to see that. But essentially, you have filmmaker Alan Seawright and LMFT Jonathan Decker, who are the hosts of the show that review movies from the filmmaker and mental health standpoints. Therapeutic standpoints, which are pretty nice. Alan, who's the filmmaker, went to BYU and has Russian listed on his LinkedIn, so I'm assuming he served a mission somewhere that speaks Russian. His IMDb listed some of his notable films. The one that really caught my eye was called CTU Provo. I'm like, what is that? But it looks like, I watched the trailer for it, and it looks like it's some sort of like slapstick comedy action movie starring Donny Osmond.
Of course. It
as
always
a villain.
comes back around, doesn't it?
Right?
It all connects.
So interesting. And then the unlikely hero of the show is a 24 fan, like the show 24, a 24 fan portrayed by his good friend and YouTube co-host Jonathan Decker. When I was looking this up, I looked up him first, and it took me a while to connect the dots that Jono Decker in the film credits is actually the co-host on the YouTube channel.
I see.
So he was the star of the movie. And honestly, I think that this is going to have to be one of the ones that we watch for a
watch party.
A watch party, because for one, it's on YouTube, so
Oh, yeah.
we can all watch it. And 2, it just looks really funny and interesting, and I would love to see it. So
We love Mormon film, right?
we love Mormon film. It's
We've made you guys
cringy,
watch
it's
the
awesome.
cringiest shit.
And it looks like really well, like maybe low budget, but really well done. I think he is an excellent filmmaker for whatever things that he had at his disposal. But we also have Jonathan Decker, who's an LMFT. He got his bachelor's from BYU and his master's from Auburn, and he also has Spanish listed on his LinkedIn. But I couldn't find anything about where he would have served.
One would assume.
One would assume he speaks Spanish because he served a mission. He's the clinical director of Your Family Expert PLLC, which looks like it's his practice. I don't know if he still does stuff through there. His website was old as shit, and he had like causes I support, and it's like the old Operation Underground Railroad logo.
Oh, so maybe it hasn't been updated in a while.
Yeah, it looked like it was pretty defunct. It was pretty old.
We all know how we feel about Operation Underground Railroad over here.
Yeah. And then on top of that, he has obviously the Cinema Therapy channel that he does with Alan. And he's the co-host of Mended Light, which he does with his now ex-wife, Alicia, I'm guessing. So he's a big, busy guy. But he basically does the same thing
Are
that
they still
he does
doing
on,
that podcast even though they're divorced?
I think so.
That's
Mostly
interesting.
he's been doing solo stuff about movies there. So he does basically what he does on Cinema Therapy, but it's just him.
I was like, that's unlikely,
And
but
kind
okay.
of, yeah. But
Fascinating.
anyway.
We love good co-parenting relationships,
We love good
am I right?
co-parenting, healthy co-parenting. I couldn't really find a lot on the Mormon Connection with Alan. So if it's out there, I didn't dig as deep. I was really kind of interested in Jonathan because I think he's a really cool guy.
Solid dude, bro.
On the Mended Light channel in the community tab, just like 2 weeks ago, he posted this photo, which usually would be not very notable aside from the very cute kitten on his shoulder.
So cute. Oh my God.
But what struck me was the posters that were on the wall. Now, initially I thought, oh, this is the family, a proclamation to the
We
world.
used to have that on our wall.
Which I hate and is very common to have on the wall in Mormon households because it kind of outlines the
nuclear family.
And how it's ordained of God and
no
whatever.
gay shit. Gender is eternal.
Right. Just like the federal government says now. But upon further inspection, I realized that it is the more recent proclamation that was made in 2020 about the first vision that Joseph Smith received, where he saw God and Jesus Christ. Or at least that's what he said in the official account.
Did say that.
It's a little convoluted when you look at other times when he described the same exact experience.
He had some trouble.
Yeah.
With the storyline.
Trouble remembering the foundational memory of his fucking church.
But I'll put my Mormon hat on and say memory is fallible, you guys.
Anyway, we're not getting into the weeds on this time.
I'm sorry.
And the family, a proclamation to the world, is not on the wall. So he has this proclamation, which is just about
the first
Joseph seeing God. And this other document is the Articles of Faith, which are 13 little points that Joseph Smith outlined the Mormons believe, and not the family a proclamation to the world.
Unless it's right next to his head. And we just
but
can't
I don't know.
see it.
There's no visual cues that say that. And the reason why I'm also tempted to believe that he does not have that on his wall is the things that he's posted on Instagram, specifically
Not
this
the
post right here.
Instagram.
The Insta post. So he posted this on his Instagram back in 2023. And in the caption, he writes,
So it says, how can you be a Latter-day Saint and an LGBTQIA ally? Isn't that serving two masters? Very common Mormon question here. I got a version of that question yesterday. I found that being me clashes with some people on either side of the aisle. Some applaud my advocacy, but not my faith. Others feel that I don't represent my religion well because of my allyship. Some on both sides see me as a wolf in sheep's clothing, but not really standing for them because of my association with the other. I'll be frank, if I bother you, that's for you to either work out or peace out. If it's the latter, no hard feelings, see you later. I've done a lot of psychological and spiritual self-work to get to the peace I have now. My evolution is my own. And I've said this before, but as I still get questions, critiques, and comments, I'll likely have to keep clarifying once in a while. I love my faith. I also love queer people. Both are my family and my friends. Turns out picking one over the other is a false dichotomy. Love one another is my focus. We don't choose our sexualities. We do choose the paths we walk. If someone chooses the lonely walk of celibacy, I'll make it less lonely with my friendship. If another chooses romantic love, I'll be their friend and ally. We believe in honesty. Honestly, queer people and their relationships are beautiful to me. I honor them, period. I think this is pretty emphatic for a Mormon, to be honest. Like, this is definitely going to trigger people.
Yeah.
This is going to trigger some Mormons for sure. It makes sense why he talks about having to like clarify or the critiques and shit that he gets. And I respect Mormons who stand on business with these issues more so than the ones who just actively perpetuate homophobia and transphobia.
Yeah, because usually the most that you'll get people who, I'm going to be a little critical here, the most that you get from a lot of people who say that they're allies and they're Mormons is just like, yeah, I love you regardless.
Yeah, I love you in spite of the fact that you're a big fat sinner.
But, I mean, the fact of the matter is it's not really a safe place for queer folks to be.
Yeah.
Because you're expected to fall in line. You're expected to, you know, maintain celibacy if you're, and I love this most of all.
Yeah.
Is that he is very direct. You're supposed to be celibate. Because I feel like more often than not, Mormons are beating around the bush on that fact.
Yeah.
If you are not going to forsake your sexuality and just be in a heterosexual relationship, you have to maintain celibacy. There's no other, those are your two options. There's no way to get around it. And he's at least going to admit that and everything. So I really appreciate that because, I mean, there's, like I was saying, the church is not a safe place for queer folks, especially for trans folks. I mean, like, even now, especially, you're not even allowed to go to the bathroom in the building.
No.
You got to go find your own place to pee.
Mm-hmm. And you can't work with kids.
And you can't work with kids specifically.
That should tell you everything you need to know about the organization you belong to. I'm sorry.
And that's why...
But I understand not wanting to not be able to reconcile it.
Yeah.
Like, I understand people finding space for both, and I think that is better than...
It's better than
just
nothing.
being a homophobe. Yeah.
So, I don't know. People who are making posts like these, usually I feel like... and I'm hoping that they don't give money to the organization that's going to use it against the people that they love. I would hope. And it's really easy for me to say as someone who's on the outside that if you're still giving money to them, you're not really doing anything. But that's truly what I think. And I feel like someone like this is probably going to be doing more help than hurt. People
especially
like Brandon
if you have
Sanderson
a platform. I feel like you know, there's more of a risk for you to talk about these things and, you know, turn you into your bishop.
Yeah.
You know, turn you into your stake president. I feel like the cost is higher because you have more eyes on you. So I appreciate when people are more vocal when there's more to lose. As a queer person, this is like a good, better, best situation to me.
Yeah.
Like, this is good. Not paying tithing is better. Not belonging to an organization that oppresses
is the
marginalized
best.
Group is the best. But I understand that not everybody's going to pick that path, and it's not up to me. And he doesn't give a what I say anyway. So everybody has their path.
Yeah.
This, in my opinion, is better than nothing.
And then just to tag along with that, he wrote a post for, is it an article? Is it a post? I don't know. But he wrote a little thing for Latter-Gay Stories back in 2020. And just a thing that really resonated with me. He said, transgender friends, you call yourself Susan, though you were born Stephen. You ask to be referred to as she, though you were born as he, or he, though you were born as she, or they/them instead of him or her. I may not understand it, but I know it's real to you. I may see the world differently, but why would I try to enforce my worldview on you? Is it not a sign of respect to call you by your preferred title? I feel like that attempt at empathy is probably the most meaningful thing that somebody could see and say, okay, he belongs to this church and he proclaims himself a Christian and everything like that, but he is someone who is not going to dogpile me for who I am, and he's going to try to empathize and try to understand, and that falls in the good range at the very least.
Yeah. So thank you, if you are still here, for participating in this unlikely Mormon influencer video. I hope we maybe brought some people to your attention that you weren't aware of, or that was interesting to you, or at the least entertaining. I think this demonstrates the level of nuance that we have to have in these discussions, because there isn't like a black or white, it's all good or it's all bad. In any of these cases, it is much more complicated and complex than that. And we honor that, I think, by having these discussions and having opinions, and me being a queer person and talking about these things. Plus, it's just fascinating, like theories as to why people end up in these positions, why Mormons are so famous, why they resonate with the public so well. Like, I think there's just lots of interesting theory that underlies this discussion that we could talk about for ages, and that everybody has their own opinions on. So if you like this video, if you want something else like this, if you want us to talk about more influencers that we haven't talked about, you guys always have some that we just don't have enough time to get around to. So drop them in the comments.
There were even a couple on this list that I didn't end up researching. I was like, we've got plenty to yap about for
because we are yappers.
We're yappers.
But you know it.
Throw it in the comments. We'll take a look at it. We want to keep these conversations going and everything like that, because it's important that people are armed with information, you know.
Yes.
Especially in regards to the Mormon Church, because I feel like people have strong opinions, and I feel like people deserve to know.
And if you have strong opinions and you're mad about something and you're going to go write a fucking chapter book in the comments, one, I'm not going to read it. Number one. So just don't waste your time, because I'm not going to read it. But two, why do you care? Why does my opinion care? Like, why, like, my words can't even make sense anymore. Why do you care about my opinion enough to, like, sit here and watch the video and comment on it? Like, I'm not necessarily going to bitch because you help us and it, you know, it helps the algorithm. But, like, I'm just a random fucking person on the internet. Like, don't put so much stock into my opinion that you get so triggered that you're thinking about it for, like, days on end. Like, I promise you, I'm not that interesting.
You're very interesting in my opinion.
I'm just saying, if you're super triggered about it, just remind yourself, it's okay. I don't know this person in real life. They're not going to haunt me in my dreams, and I can go touch grass and I will be okay.
Right. And if you're really that mad about it, you can go over on Instagram on your business Instagram account and leave a comment on a picture of me and calling me fat, saying that I'm a woman.
That's what people do in our comment section. And, you know, this is when people are like, do you read comments? Nope. And that's why.
Jordan just blocks them before I can
I don't have
slam
the
them for having a joint
that.
Facebook account with their husband.
I can't. I don't have the energy. Don't bring that shit over here.
If you enjoyed this, hit that subscribe button. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's get to it.
Smash it.
Hit that subscribe button. Become one of over 100,000 people on YouTube that subscribe to us. It's really cool. It's really awesome. Everybody worked to get us here.
We have a cool community.
We are eternally grateful to you. If you'd like to further support us, get some early access to episode like this one, you got early access to it if you were a member or a patron. You also get exclusive content, bloopers and stuff like that. Access to, I was talking about earlier, watch parties, because those are pretty cool.
Yeah.
You can join the Patreon. You can become a member. Become a member button is right next to the subscribe button. Check that out. Get exclusive stuff. Support us. We appreciate that. All the members, all the patrons, because they help us be able to do this. This is not our job. This is on top of the other things that we do during the day. Jordan's a therapist. I'm a full-time dad, so
your support means a lot. Because it makes it so we can keep doing
We
that.
really appreciate it. Additionally, if you would like to get more up to the minute updates, you can follow us on Instagram at Jordan McKay. You can also find us, for the time being, because it's still banned, even though it's still working. You can also find us posting clips and shit on TikTok. We'll see what the fate of TikTok is. If they do end up selling, I feel like it's going to be a lost fucking cause at that point. It'll probably change too much.
Who's to know?
TikTok's just lightning in a bottle. I love it, and I hope it doesn't change. We also have an awesome Discord community, which is where we do said watch parties usually, unless we're watching stuff that's on YouTube, like Provost most eligible. But yeah, so go over to the Discord, join the awesome community of a bunch of other people. We don't just talk about Mormonism. There's a channel for basically anything you want to talk about. But to close things out, we love you. You're awesome. Arm yourselves with information. Although don't overconsume news right now.
Welcome to Jordan's Therapy Corner.
Protect your fucking peace.
Let me tell you right now.
Oh, hold on.
Put your phone away. Put it down.
Read a book.
You listen to me.
You should be reading Onyx
Listen.
Storm. It just
Listen.
came out. It's going to destroy you.
Right now. I know it is a privilege to not be informed. I know that. You know that. And a lot of us are worried that if we check out or step out or take breaks, that we are exercising that privilege of not being informed. That does not apply to you. Okay? If that is a thought in your head and you are conscious of that, I need you to not worry about it, because you can't do the things that you need to do. You can't be a revolutionary. You can't stand up in this community and advocate for the people who need it if you are too tired. Okay? And our people, especially our marginalized people, need us right now. And you cannot do your job right, and you cannot support and organize if you are too fucking overwhelmed. And your brain is not designed to handle the 24-hour news cycle. It is not going to work. Your brain cannot contain it. So take a break. Give yourself a break. Use social media with purpose. Don't use it unless you're looking something up intentionally. Lean into your hobbies. Lean into your community. That is what we need to be doing right now. Do not overwhelm yourself with political stuff. It will always be there. So take a break. Now you have been lectured by me in my therapy corner, and I'm done.
Last second Jordan lecture. Let's go.
I'm sorry. We are all struggling and overwhelmed.
Anyway.
You can take a break. Please
Take
do.
a break. Take a break. Protect yourself. And then when you're ready,
You can come back.
you can come back and do what you need. But listen to the words of my lovely wife, because she speaks true. We love you, and we'll see you next time.